We're going to start, and with these, we're looking at our standard form, okay, on number 7. So we want to use negative b over 2a. Okay, so the opposite of b would be positive 16, because we have a negative 16 there, and then 2 times negative 2. So we would have 16 over negative 4, which would give us negative 4. Okay, so now to figure out our y value, we're going to have to plug our negative 4 into this function here. So negative 2 times negative 4 squared minus 16 times negative 4 minus 35. So we'd have negative 2, I'm going to kind of go horizontal here, times 16 plus 64 minus 35, which would give us negative 32 plus 64 minus 35, or 32 minus 35, which would be negative 3. So our vertex is at negative 4, negative 3. Let's see right here. Alright, so this right here, negative 35, would be our y-intercept, but since that's not on the graph, we want to probably make an xy chart. So we need to find at least 2 other pieces. So I'm going to do negative 4, negative 3, I'm going to go smaller, and I'm going to go a little bigger. So pick one of those, plug it in. I know there's kind of run out of room here, but negative 2 times, I'm going to use negative 3 squared minus 16 times negative 3 minus 35. So we would have negative 2 times 9 plus 16 times 3 is, using a calculator here, probably have figured it out by now, 48 minus 35, which gives us negative 18 plus 48 minus 35 would be 30 minus 35, which would be negative 5. It should be the same on the other side. You could go ahead and check that if you'd like, but I will graph those points. So negative 5 is at negative 5, and negative 3 is at negative 5. And there's our parabola. Okay. Number 8, you have a couple options. You could either use negative b over 2a. You could always try to factor this and find your y-intercepts, or sorry, excuse me, your x-intercepts. But it looks like if we tried to factor this, there's no factor of 7 that would add up to 6. So this isn't going to work. We're going to have to use negative b over 2a again. So we would have negative, the opposite of negative 6, I guess. So we have positive 6 times 2 times 1, which would be 2, so we'd have 3. So to find my y value there, I would have 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 7. So I'd have 9, I'll go this way, minus 18 plus 7, which would give me negative 9 plus 7, or negative 2. So my vertex is at 3, negative 2. Okay, so one smaller, one bigger. So at 2, we would have 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 7. So we'd have 4 minus 12 plus 7, which would be negative 8 plus 7, which would give us negative 1. If we plugged in 4, we'd have 4 squared, which would be 16, minus 24. So 24 minus 16 is 8, so that would be negative 8 plus 7, which would also give us negative 1. So we have 2, negative 1, and 4, negative 1. If we were able to fit that on the graph, that could be our y-intercept, but since our graph doesn't fit that, we'll use the xy chart. Alright, moving on. Okay, so again, always check to see if you could factor this, because then maybe it would be easier with your your x-intercepts. If I look to factor this, I would be looking for factor of 18 that would add up to 8, because we're going to have plus and plus. So actually, let's see, we have 2 and 9, that wouldn't work. 3 and 6, that wouldn't work. I don't think it's going to work. Okay, so again, we got to use negative b over 2a. And this is something we did before. So we'd have negative 8 over 2 times 1, which would give us negative 8 over 2, which would be negative 4. Plug in negative 4, so we have negative 4 squared plus 8 times negative 4 plus 18, which would give us 16 plus 32, negative 32 plus 18. So negative 16 plus 18, which would give me negative 2. So my vertex is at negative 4, negative 2. No? Positive 2. There we go. So XY chart, because 18 is off the graph, negative 4, 2. So you could either do negative 5 or negative 3. I tend to like to work with smaller numbers, but whatever works for you. So negative 3 squared plus 8 times negative 3 plus 18. So this would be 9 plus negative 24 plus 18. So 9 plus 24, or negative 24 would be negative 15 plus 18 would be positive 3. So at negative 3, we should be at positive 3. So that's probably true for negative 5, but you may want to check that just to make sure. So this would be 25 plus 40, which would give us 15 plus, negative 15 plus 18. That would work. Okay. Same thing here. We probably don't want to factor this because of our 2. So let's work with negative b over 2a, which would give us 12 over 4, 2 times 2, which would be 3. Plug that in. 12 times 3 plus 17. Gotta work my way down. So 2 times 9, 3 squared, would be 18, minus 36 plus 17. Would be negative 18 plus 17, or negative 1. So 3, negative 1. And they couldn't just make it easy on us and have 17 on our graph, so here we go again with our XY charts. 3, negative 1, so we could do 2 or 4. So I'm going to plug 2 in there. So 2 times 4 minus 12 times 2 would be 24 plus 17. So we got 8 minus 24 plus 17. So we get negative 16 plus 17, or 1. So 3, negative 1. 2, 1. And 4, 1. There we go. Pause if you need. All right. Still working with our negative b over 2a. Not my favorites. I understand there's a lot of work that goes into this, but we got to do it. So we got 4 over 2 times 1/2 is 1. So 4. So now plug it in. So we get 4 squared is 16. Half of that is 8. And then negative 16 plus 5. So we got negative 8 plus 5. So we get negative 3. So I took a lot of shortcuts there. If you need me to do that all the way out, just come ask me. So I have x and y, because 5, of course, is not on the graph. So we have 4 and negative 3, 3 and 5. So if I do 3, that's fine. So I'm going to have some fractions involved. 3 squared is 9, so I would have 9 halves minus 12 plus 5. So this is really 24 halves. If I subtract 9 from that, 24 minus 9, it gives me 15 halves plus 5, which is really 10 over 2. So that's 25 halves, I believe. I might have done something wrong here. This should be negative 16 halves because this is negative or plus a negative. So really what we end up with is 5 halves, or negative 5 halves, or 2 and 1/2. Okay, so 4, -3, 2 and 1/2, so 3, -2.5. Oops, that's incorrect. That's at -1.5. Get my eraser. And, oops. Just make my right point there. There we go. Okay, we might actually be able to factor number 12. Let's check. So we have -x squared minus 2x plus 1. So let's try to factor out a -1. Still might not be able to factor this. So x and x got different signs. Anything that, nope, we're not going to be able to factor that. So back to our lovely -b over 2a. So we'd have 2 over 2 times -1, which would be -1. Plugging in -1 is going to give us, well, -1 squared is 1, and that's the opposite of that. So we have -1 minus or plus 2, because 2 times -1 would be -2, the opposite of that, plus 1. So we'd have 1 plus 1, which is 2. So our vertex is at -1, 2. So 0 and, oops, this should be -2 and this should be 0. I'm going to use 0. So then that's going to be at 1. This will also be at 1. So at -1, we're at 2. This graph should be heading down. So at -2, we're at 1. And at 0, we're at 1. And I could have found that from right there using my y-intercept. Boom. I'm going to stop this video, and I'm going to have to make a third one.